are live at the AWS Summit in Paris. I'm AM Grabellian, developer advocate for AWS Game Day, joined by my co-host Steve.
Hello, developer advocate for .NET and PowerShell.
And we've got a very special guest down here at the end. Cedric, please introduce yourself.
So, good morning, everyone. I am Cedric Pelvet. I am a specialist solutions architect within analytics, and I focus on OpenSearch.
Now, I was reading through the topic here, and I'm very excited because I've got a little bit of a background in security. OpenSearch, very commonly used throughout the security industry for log analytics and for investigations for security breaches and things like that. First off, it's inevitable, right? A security breach is going to happen at some point in your organization. Where does OpenSearch come into that to begin with? Like, what have customers been traditionally using before we talk about the new features in OpenSearch that we're here to talk about with security? How have they been utilizing OpenSearch prior?
Absolutely. So OpenSearch is, first of all, it's an open source technology that is going to bring you the capability to get your logs and see through them. It also enables, obviously, search. So you can search through the logs, but also search through different data sets. The idea here is that you are used to be having your application logs. You can look through them, see if your applications are behaving properly. You can do observability, looking at the metrics, at the traces, and at the logs. But really, security is, the security logs are a bit different. And security logs, you want to see if there is something wrong, if there's a pattern of an activity that you can maybe see before something bad happens. Yes. And something bad can happen anywhere, and we can see in the news all the time something can happen. And this can be due to data exfiltration. It could be password compromission. It could be security posture issue. Having signals and seeing them with a tool like OpenSearch definitely helps with knowing what's going on and act very quickly.
Right. And OpenSearch in general is a very key piece of any DevOps and logging type of setup too. But as you said, with security, the formatting's different for some of these events.
Yes.
And you've also got a reactive view and a proactive view into security, right? Like, so you may be doing an investigation after the fact. You may be trying to event off of ongoing things that are happening throughout your account. With security analytics in OpenSearch that we're here to talk about today,
absolutely,
what's changed?
So what's changed is that we introduced the security analytics feature inside of OpenSearch, and we included an engine, a rules engine that is an open source rules engine that comes from like Sigma, and we have 2,200 rules that are already pre-configured. And basically, we are going to do live monitoring. So you will be able to specify your log sources, security log sources, and you will be able to apply the security rules that you want to see. And you can configure them. It's not like out of the box. If you're not an expert, you can use them. But if you want to go a bit more in details and more in depth, you can actually add your own rules, and you can customize the existing ones.
Wow.
Which means that you don't have to be really a security expert to start with having better security and understanding it. The rules are there out of the box, and we support several log formats out of the box, like Windows logs, DNS logs, NetFlow logs, and we are going to support more and more with time. And we provide, so these security rules, we provide the mapping between the log formats and what the security rules want to look at, and then we have the alerting. So you can be alerted that something looks suspicious, and maybe you need to have a look at it. And then the expert can come in and see, yes, let me investigate and look at what's going on.
You mentioned there different log formats coming in. Do they stay in that log format, or do they all get converted into a normalized format?
So there are multiple things that come in. So basically, OpenSearch works with JSON formats. So you can have logs in other formats than JSON, and then at some point you need to convert them to JSON. Ideally, you will have a common format for these logs. And for example, if you look at what we have with Amazon Security Lake, for example, we convert logs such as CloudTrail logs with Security Hub findings, also Route 53 logs, to a common format that we call the OCSF, for Open Cybersecurity Schema format. And this is like normalizing the logs. when you arrive with logs that are external security logs in JSON format that have been converted, you don't really need to normalize them to anything specific because the mapping for, as I said, some existing log formats is done internally. So you can have one log for one format for storage, and then the rules will be mapping the fields that you stored to the rules.
Okay.
But if you have something completely custom, you can also create your own mapping, and the rules will apply. The rules expect something specific, but your log format can be something very different, and then you can do the mapping
Right.
to make it
That's
work.
pretty cool.
Now, some of our viewers obviously are security engineers, some
Yes.
are not. When you're explaining this to a customer or a person who maybe isn't a security engineer, how do you tell them how to prioritize, logs? Which areas should they be pushing into OpenSearch? You mentioned a few already, DNS,
Yes.
maybe Active Directory. What are some areas that you urge people to be utilizing these security analytics to help harden their environments?
Yes, so there are multiple parts. There is, I would say, the infrastructure logs, and there are also the application logs. So if you have a live application where you have authentication and authorization, you can already have your application logs inside of OpenSearch. That's one thing. Then you have your security logs from your infrastructure. So that could be DNS, that could be routers, that could be CloudTrail, that could be really anything related to only security. And then at some point, you will want to be able to do correlation between these logs. Maybe there is an issue at the application level that granted an access to some data inside an S3 bucket. I don't know.
Right.
So only looking at one side of the problem will not give you the full picture. So really want to start with your application logs and then add the security logs and then see with dashboards. So that's really the strength of open source dashboards. You can see log coming from multiple places, multiple sources at once, and see what's going on.
I love that advice because security issues are often complex. They aren't just one area that has failed and granted, unauthorized access to something.
Yes.
It's typically multiple areas all coalescing into something, and so you have to have these different logs that you can correlate, as you said, right?
Absolutely.
I love that advice. That's perfect. Now, we're talking about Security Lake 2 as well when we are mentioning OpenSearch here. These two work together. Can you tell us more about how customers can utilize OpenSearch with Security Lake?
So Security Lake, just a reminder of what it is.
Yes.
So
Yes, please.
to start with, so Security Lake brings logs coming from, currently I believe it's four different sources. So we have VPC flow logs, we have CloudTrail logs, we have Road 53, and we have Security Hub findings. These logs are converted to the OCSF format, stored in Parquet in S3. And this is secured with lake formation for the access of these security logs, because there can be some very sensitive information inside of there. So,
Right.
so
We have partners, too, who can push to Security Lake as well, I believe.
Absolutely.
Right.
So the log sources I mentioned were from AWS,
From
but
AWS, yes.
you can have other sources, and then you can have multiple destinations. So Security Lake is, so this is something that the service team is currently improving and working on automating multiple things, like one-click access to the security logs inside of Security Lake, inside of OpenSearch. Currently, you still have to send them you can automate that, but it's not out of the box, so we are working on making that out of the box. These logs, in a specific format, then you can send them to OpenSearch. OpenSearch will index the logs and will enable full text search within the logs. You can see different fields. So you can see, for example, an IP address coming from, like in the DNS resolve. You can see an IP address. Also in application logs, you can see an IP address here and there. And the main challenge is that this IP address in one log can have a specific name, and an IP address in another log can have a different name. And then if you want to correlate these two, that's becoming a nightmare.
Yeah.
So you
like
really
it.
want to have a common name for these logs, and we are adding this kind of feature also to OpenSearch. So it's not really part of the OpenSearch security analytics. It's more broadly to what we have with observability.
I see.
But this is something that's very important. If you want to correlate logs across multiple sources, you need to have names that will be matching. Otherwise, you will have a hard time.
Yes, you will, definitely.
I was going to say that's the understatement of the year, isn't it?
It is, yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, the log volume, generally speaking, is massive.
Yeah.
I would imagine. As
Yes, it varies from customers to customers.
Of course.
But what we see, like the biggest workloads that we see at AWS on Amazon OpenSearch Service, are tens of terabytes of logs per day, and that's
Tens of terabytes.
tens of terabytes. And I've seen more than 100
It's okay,
terabytes
Steve.
of logs per
It's
day.
okay.
And this is when we need to talk to specialists like me to see how we can do that.
Right.
When we reach that level, this is very, very complex, and we need really to make this work at this scale. We need to have a very good infrastructure that will scale with the activity, that will be able to maintain everything working properly. Because this is very important. You need to have something that is working when you monitor your applications or when you monitor your security.
Right. Now, Cedric, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this or not. Please feel free to say no. Could you talk to us a little bit more about the eventing? So sending a notification based off of
Yes.
something on the rules engine that has triggered. What does that look like, and how do our customers utilize that type of setup?
Yes, so we do have, so OpenSearch dashboard is what enables you to do that graphically. You can also automate that with the API. Everything is based on a REST API, so you can automate everything. For example, if you want to provision these rules, these mappings, and the automation of the event being sent by email, for example,
Right.
You can automate everything if you want. So the way it works is you specify the different thresholds on the rules. So for example, if you have a certain level of, I would say, like there is something, but you may be not 100% sure. Like you have a score on the rule.
Right.
The rule will tell you, well, this is very high or this is lower, and then depending on the score, you can have the threshold and then select the criticity of the finding.
Oh, is this like prioritization based off of? Are you saying you weight the rules based off of like how important it is to remediate when you find this, or is this how likely it is that this thing happened?
So something happens.
Okay.
Then based on what happened, you will have a score. Is it like something that is like a strong signal or a weak signal?
I see.
And then depending on maybe the log source, you can specify on the rule that happened, you can specify the criticity that you want to add. And then on the criticity, so first of all, you will be able to see them in the list in the OpenSearch dashboard user interface. But you can also configure the alerting. And the alerting will basically be able to send a customized message to Slack, to SNS, so if you want to send that to an email, or to a custom webhook, for example.
Right.
So multiple destinations are possible, and really we are not limited to anything there. Customers are using all sorts of alerting, and basically then you don't have to stay in front of the dashboard all day long. That's very important.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
I'm
You have
alerted.
other things to do.
I'm paged that something may be wrong. I'm going. I have the link to the dashboard. What do I need to investigate? And then I can have a look and look through the logs. And this is what's important here. I'm not looking just at one source. It's like, okay, it seems that someone tried multiple times a password, and it's starting to see multiple rejects.
Would that start as like a weak signal?
Usually,
and then
yes.
kind of go up in criticality of like, hang on, something's definitely going, wrong here from a security perspective.
Yeah. So
Page someone.
Absolutely. So if you have a strong signal, that's probably a little bit late, because that probably means that something has been compromised already.
Right.
That would be I would say, the bare minimum. Like something happened, you need to be aware of it, and you need to be able to remediate it.
Right,
but that's
now.
after the fact.
Right.
And if you want to start seeing that something like the behavior is not
like a
as
pattern,
usual,
yeah.
and there are patterns that are basically completely new, like attacks are new every day. And new patterns arrive, so you don't necessarily have all the knowledge of all the patterns at any point in time. And having like this, I would say low score, but still present like maybe frequently, is also a signal that you need to look at. And then you will need to have a look at, okay, what's going on? Maybe there's a compromission of a specific access, so you can revoke the access key, for example,
Right.
to an S3 bucket, and yeah. So
Yeah. A real issue in a lot of places is alert fatigue, right? So you know, if you set things up to alert too frequently,
Yes.
people stop paying attention.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what type of advice have you given to our customers around kind of finding that balance between, you know, I don't want to alert my security engineers just about anything. And do we have anything built into OpenSearch security analytics that helps with that?
So the alerting is more general. It's not really tied to security analytics only.
Right.
I mean, you can have anomaly detection on classical logs to see if something goes wrong or not, and then you can also have the alerting. So first of all, you can have some throttling on the alerting. Like if something happens once, twice, 3 times, etc., you don't want to receive 1,000 emails. Like it's not
Right.
going to spam you. First thing. Then, depending on what you really want to do, you can specify the really I would say the threshold on the score of the anomaly that you see in the security alerts. You can specify when you want to receive an email or not, and you can have multiple levels. Like something is very critical, you need to be paged. Something is not as critical, maybe you will have an email, and then you will have a look at a later time.
Right.
The criticality is different, and the reaction is different. And as you mentioned, there are multiple things. There is the real-time discovery that we are talking about right now. And then you need to also be able to go back in time. And because OpenSearch stores and indexes all the logs, and you can benefit from, for example, ultra-warm to store the logs for a very long period of time while reducing the cost, you can also look back in time with what happened on the security logs. So the security part on the historical log is something that we are working on. But for alerting on for a discovery of, did I see a pattern like this in the past? You can already do that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where you see the patterns, right? When you look at the historical data,
Yes.
that's when you see the patterns. If it's happening now, you don't necessarily know that this has happened before as part of this set of signals.
Absolutely.
Right?
Let's imagine there's a new security alert, like a new discovery of a pattern of an attack. Maybe that happened in the past, but you were not aware of this attack.
Yep.
So now that you discover it, you have the rule, you configure it properly. Did it happen in the past? When and how frequently?
Right. Now, Cedric, I know you were delivering a talk here at the AWS
Absolutely.
Summit. We haven't looked at any of your slides. I didn't know if you had any maybe architecture slides or anything that you wanted to get to, showing us a bit.
I don't have architecture slides, but I can. Let me see if I have a specific slide. This one maybe.
Oh, this sounds interesting. Investigation. This
workflow.
yeah, this is what we were talking about.
Yeah, this is what we are talking about. So this is the investigation workflow that we were just talking about. So you identify and ingest the logs that you want, security logs. So you can specify like you want
you
all the
can't
logs.
investigate what's not there, right?
Yes,
you gotta have the logs.
Absolutely. So you have your log sources. You select the log sources that you want to have. You send them, and then you create a detector based on existing rules or custom rules that you want.
Okay.
And then you can configure the alerts. And then you have the alerts that are being logged inside the tool itself, the security analytics dashboard. But you can also receive the alerts with an email, paging, etc. And then you can be aware of something. And then you will be looking at that, saying, okay, this has been investigated or not. So you have the event management.
Right.
These kind of solutions, we talk about SIEM solutions, SIEM, so that's security, information, and event management. Before that, we had the SIM,
right,
information, and now we have the events as well.
Right.
So this is really the full picture or the beginning of something that's even going to be even bigger, but this is already something that's very big in the security industry, where you want to have, first of all, a SOC, so Security Operational Center. You want to build that on open source technologies like OpenSearch, you can do that.
I mean, the response is actually one of the more difficult pieces of these too, and that's probably where people, especially if they've got a setup like this for an investigation workflow, that's where they're going to spend most of their time, because the the left-hand side of this is set up to happen automatically.
Absolutely. So the last part, the response, is really when you want to have the experts.
Yeah, that's the
security experts.
human in the loop, so
But
to
you don't
speak.
you don't really want to have or you don't need to have the experts all the time. Maybe when you configure the rules, if you want something very specific. But other than that, you can already collect the logs,
Right.
have the tool generate findings for you, and already be aware that something
Yeah, I was
is
going to
there or
say
not.
that it seems like for most people that right-hand side would be the most interesting place to be. Right, configuring rules is like, okay, right, I'm configuring rules.
Just
right?
has to be there, yeah.
It just has to be there, right? So the more it can do that for me, the better. Then I
Right.
can spend time on the value add of like, okay, what is our response to this?
Right.
Right.
Yes. We did have a question from chat around configuration on, and I believe the answer here is yes. But can I configure specific settings to alert just on specific like rules coming in through the rule engine?
Yeah, so you specify the rules you want to execute against a specific log source, and then you specify the criticality level, specify the thresholds, and when the alerts is going to be there. So you can configure pretty much anything.
Right.
If something is not there and you would like to add, don't hesitate to get back to us through either the GitHub project or through AWS directly. This is how we can improve our products and services.
Of course.
So if something is missing, don't hesitate to tell us, and we are going to be looking at that.
I was curious. You mentioned Slack, which makes total sense. You see a lot in the Slack ops type situation. What about something like Jira, like ticketing services, or ServiceNow, something like that?
So we do support webhooks. So basically, as long as you have like an API on the other side, so Jira, for example, it will work.
Great, perfect. So I know some people do that too. Well, Cedric, unfortunately, our time is up together, but this has been incredibly informative. Really appreciate
Thank you very much for having
on.
me.
Thank you for coming here. And you, stick around, because we'll be back with more from the AWS Summit here in Paris.